Hey, Kory, how you doing?
Doing great, and yourself?
Good, good. You ready to kill a Duramax?
Came 2,000 miles for it.
Well,
let's bang this thing.
Let's do it.
Hell yeah.
So this is the engine assembly area.
All right.
L5Ps all over the place. So, we're here to talk about, building performance diesels, but your tuning is excellent. I'm confident of that.
Well, thank you.
I mean, you're not yet 30, are you?
I'll be 30 this year.
There you go.
A few months left.
There you go.
Almost there.
Oh man, was I close on that one?
So we got a lot to learn. Yeah. November I'll be 30.
All right.
Yeah.
So August I'll be 77. So I can see the back door from here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You don't even know where the house is.
No, I haven't even found it yet.
No.
We're just scooping dirt.
Yeah. I'm going to build the house.
We're trying to build
the house.
We're trying to build one.
Yeah.
We got a long ways to go.
I look at this. If I got another 20 years, I'm going to be very happy about that. What I want to find out is, what does it take to push the head off the deck?
Right.
And lose the gasket? Then you got a wrenching pressure problem. So then you go to studs.
Right.
I've never been a guy who builds a racing engine with parts you don't need.
Right.
I mean, why spend the money on this stuff? Well, most guys do because everybody else does it.
Right.
And because nobody knows where the limits are.
They haven't identified the source of the issue.
Exactly.
Right.
If you stud the thing, then you got stronger studs. But did you need them?
Right.
So we're going to find when the heads come off the gaskets to where you lose gasket seal, I think before we fail a cylinder head. We are going to break something ultimately.
Right.
I don't know what it's going to be.
Curious to find out.
I want to know how
I want to know.
When it breaks, I want to have the data and go, oh, okay.
Yeah. This is legitimately
Yes.
the weak point.
Yes. It's not because I didn't have enough water pump.
Right.
So I over-temped and flashed off the steam in the cylinder heads, or not enough oil pump.
I like to call it an intelligent failure.
Yeah, an informed failure.
An informed failure.
Yeah.
That's the word, informed.
Yes. You know what the hell's going on. Now, I'm a data junkie.
Right.
So, what you want to know is, I spent the money on the turbocharger. Is it the right one? Is it the size? Is this the proper size? Is the compressor in its sweet spot when I'm doing the 1/8 mile or the 1/4 mile?
Right.
Or is it too big a compressor or too small a compressor? You'll find that very quickly. Same with the intercooler. Intercoolers don't move, but they sweep up after the turbocharger or the supercharger.
Right.
If they're not real efficient, then the intercooler helps you keep the engine alive and helps you make power.
Right.
But what you really want is the most efficient compressor and the most efficient intercooler. So about a month ago, I filed 2 patents on measuring and displaying intercooler efficiency.
Oh, nice.
Effectiveness is its attack on the temperature. Let's say the ambient's 100 degrees.
Right.
And your compressor discharge is 500 degrees. You got a 400 degree difference between the two. So if your intercooler cooled such that the inlet of the intercooler is 500 and the outlet's 100,
right,
that'd be 100% efficient. You got it all.
Right.
It's impossible. It's not possible because there's a pressure drop.
Right.
So what you do is you measure temperature in and out, pressure in and out, and you compute effectiveness and efficiency.
Right.
And then when you buy somebody's intercooler, and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know of an intercooler manufacturer who measures the efficiency of his intercooler or publishes it.
I agree.
They don't know.
Right.
There's a lot of guys who buy a core from someplace in China, weld some sheet metal tanks on, which are the worst for flow.
Right.
Square corners suck.
Right.
They're just terrible. So the shape of the tanks is a big deal. The hot side fins, the cold side fins, the airflow through the cold side.
Right.
We actually flow the cold side. We go on the truck, we measure the velocity coming into the core at 60 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, whatever.
Right.
And we match that velocity with ours. So the air is going through, it's not blocked by an ultra thick core.
Right.
Yeah, I want a lot of core, but I want the air to get through it.
For sure.
Otherwise, it won't cool the radiator.
For sure.
And now you're overheating your engine, and the ECU derates, coolant derate, and whatever that intercooler was supposed to do, you just got taken away. I'm talking about a guy that's either racing or a guy that's pulling a trailer up the Eisenhower grade.
Yeah, efficiency is efficiency.
Yes, there's never been a gauge to read that.
Right, and especially something that's cost efficient. So that's why we're running the iDash.
It's just another thing you get with the iDash. It's another thing you can read.
You get thousands and tens of thousands of dollars worth of tooling.
Yes.
In a pod that fits just like a normal gauge.
It writes to a .csv file.
Right.
It's
easy.
Graphic, you can chart it. I mean,
it takes a complicated process and makes it very simple.
Yeah.
So there's no reason anybody shouldn't be getting this data now.
That's right.
From racers to
and
edge
all of
to
a sudden,
calibrators.
the customers are going to be more educated than the guys making the equipment.
And then hopefully we can start seeing some better parts.
I think we will. You know, it's going to step the entire industry up. You're either going to come along, or your customers are going to know more about your parts than you know.
Yeah.
So one thing I've found, and you know, on your side-by-side, you're intercooling and kicking ass.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And you've gone through what, 4 or 5 intercoolers?
Oh yeah, we have.
And found more and more horsepower.
Oh yeah.
It would be cool on that side-by-side to look at the density and the efficiency across the intercooler.
That definitely needs to happen.
Are there any crumbs? I mean, it sounds like you ate the cake already, but you might have missed some crumbs.
There's some crumbs there, no doubt.
Yeah,
it's a new sport and relatively new engine too. So
this is how I look at this. Racing or even tuning factory stuff, where you're just tuning the stock engine,
right,
and you're finding more. The factory guys, they ate the cake.
Right.
You're just picking up the crumbs.
Yeah, we just need the crumbs.
And sometimes, you know, that's 60, 80 horsepower.
Oh,
maybe 100.
Yeah.
The crumbs are pretty damn big.
Yeah, they're nice.
But you got to be cautious about killing the turbocharger or something else.
Exactly.
You know.
Capabilities of iDash helps us to be able to spec all of this without just guesswork. Where before we're just basically making dyno pulls and sustaining load, and we'll start seeing things go backwards, and it's like, oh, that didn't work, but we're killing our engines in the process of...
And over lunch, I think I mentioned to you mass flow. You know,
right.
A MAF sensor tells you that you increase the flow.
Right.
It doesn't tell you how,
right,
or what component. The turbo, the intercooler, bigger boost tubes, a different type of ram horn, whatever.
Yep.
Is that better or not? Or is it all just sizzle and no steak?
Yep.
So we've been in the steak business for 61 years.
You know exactly the temperature.
Yeah. So what happens, let's bring number 6 up to top dead center. So getting air density into the cylinders, that's the whole, you can't mix fuel without the density being there.
Right.
The air mass. So the iDash measures the density in pounds or kilograms, pounds per 1,000 cubic feet.
For sure.
Engines pump cubic feet. One of these, the one on the dyno with a blower on it, it's a 427. And I know at 5,000 RPM, the pistons are displacing 616 cubic feet per minute. So it's real easy to come up with your mass flow without a MAF sensor.
Right.
But we're looking at what is the density, pounds per 1,000 cubic feet that we put in the intake manifold, and what's the density that gets into the cylinder? Well, it's usually less because the cylinder heads also throttle the flow.
Right.
That's what porting is all about, and bigger valves is all about, is reducing the throttling of the cylinder head. But you can never eliminate it entirely. As the engine cycles, so we go on the intake stroke, number 6 goes down, Now we filled the cylinder with density, and we're going to come back up on the compression stroke. Here we come on the compression stroke, and we fired somewhere right about there. We started injecting and fired.
Right.
The compression stroke is compressing the air, the boost air that's in there, and increasing the air density,
Right.
you know, squeezing it. Now you're injecting into that really oxygen-rich air and it's swirling.
Right.
Another thing you've got to maintain to really have a high-efficiency diesel is swirl. When you inject into the swirling air,
Right.
you're injecting straight out through the openings in the nozzle. The air is rotating. So what happens when you inject the air, the fuel particles today are very small. We have real high injection pressures and real small orifices.
Right.
And you get the finely atomized, but it doesn't explode like gasoline.
Right.
You burn the molecules off the surface of that particle. So you inject it, it's going out into the air, and fresh air is coming to it as it swirls, so it keeps getting oxygen. If guys port ahead and kill the swirl, you inject, it uses the oxygen that's there, there's no fresh, and it just goes out. What's left becomes a little tiny briquette.
Right.
It's fuel heated without the presence of oxygen. That's how you make briquettes. So the smoke is
Right.
little tiny briquettes.
Right.
That's horsepower you can see and not feel.
Right.
So I don't want smoke. Swirl is how you keep the oxygen feeding that particle of fuel until there's none left.
Right.
It's like you're peeling an onion.
Makes sense.
You're burning the layers of molecules off, and it keeps moving through the air. The velocity gives it the momentum, so it'll keep moving out this way. The swirl gives it excess oxygen, so you have complete combustion.
Right. So it brings back to the topic, too, of intelligent porting. Just because the hole's bigger does not by any means, even though maybe on a bench you're seeing more flow come
Right.
through, if it's not actually intelligently increasing the swirl also.
Most of what we've raced has been home-ported stock heads.
Right.
That, you know, when we did the S10 Pro Stock back in '07 or so,
Right.
we actually pulled a road race engine, an LLY, out of our road race truck because we kept blowing transmissions and rear ends, and we were looking for something better, and I got bored, so we bought this S10 chassis, which is a swing arm. It's for real high torque, big block use. And pretty soon we were running 777. That 772 was the quickest it went. And in '09, we put it in the NHRA museum.
Right.
And we were done. There was nobody to race. And then the next year, NHRDA asked us to bring it to the Nationals. We pulled it out. We went there. It was kind of lousy weather on the Saturday. Sunday, we had some good racing. That car won the entire event, overall, dragsters and all, and ran another 777.
77 at 180 exactly.
Yes.
Guess what the car number is? 777.
Yep.
Honest to God, this is cosmic. And my phone number has 4 sevens in it.
Oh, well, that was
Oh
just meant
my
to be.
God!
Yeah.
And I'm going to be 77 next month.
Let's
Go to Vegas.
I was
man.
just
Let's
saying,
get
we're
the hell
going to
out
play
of here.
right now.
Yeah, let's get
I'm
out
ready.
of here. So you're coming up on the firing stroke. You start injecting. It instantly starts combustion. So you're doing negative work. You're pulling power out of the crankshaft as you come to top dead center, and then you reach peak cylinder pressure somewhere about right there. So now you've got peak cylinder pressure, you're forcing the piston down. And this stroke, the power stroke, is the only stroke that puts horsepower into the crankshaft. So the crankshaft is your power broker. You deposit horsepower in, you withdraw horsepower out. So the other 3 strokes withdraw horsepower. we're at bottom dead center. We've just fired. We're opening the exhaust valve, and we're going to come up on the exhaust stroke. This one can rob a whole lot. It can pull a lot out of that crankshaft if you don't have, as we talked about earlier, enough exhaust system, enough exhaust port,
Right.
or if you have too small of a turbine or too tight of a turbine housing, all of those things. In an ideal world, the turbine drive pressure is lower than the boost pressure. So you have more pressure forcing air in than you have retarding exhaust out.
Right.
I call that, where the two are equal, crossover. If the exhaust pressure is higher than the boost pressure, that's negative crossover. One is a percentage of the other. We calculate that. If it's negative, if the exhaust is higher, it'll be minus so many percent.
Right.
If it's positive, it's plus so many percent. That means boost is higher than exhaust drive pressure.
Right.
It doesn't sound like too big a deal until you realize that if you come up on the exhaust stroke, which we just did, and you still have exhaust in the cylinder,
Right.
because you couldn't get it out through the exhaust port or the turbine housing, and you still have exhaust in the cylinder, you're now throttling the intake. You're not getting as much cubic feet of air into the cylinder as you should.
Makes sense.
And you've preheated the air.
Right.
This exhaust, it's exhaust gas recirculation the worst way possible.
Right.
It's still hot, and it's keeping intake air out. Overtemps the piston, kills your power. It's just withdrawing too much from the bank.
Right.
And guys will do it all day long. They'll make a turbo with a little tiny turbine and a big compressor, and they think that kicks it in the ass.
Right.
Reality is, if you do the compressor and turbine properly, your engine responds quicker. You actually have lower ETs in a quarter mile
Right.
than if you do it incorrectly. But nobody ever had an instrument to measure it.
Right.
So you can not only measure it, you can data log it on the iDash DataMonster.
Right.
Here's how the instrumentation goes. You've got an air intake somewhere on your car or your truck.
Right.
The temperature, pressure, and humidity of the air that God's giving you,
Right.
that you're stuck with.
Right.
Mother Nature gives you what she wants, and there's no
Right.
change in that. So what do you do with that? If it's about around 70 pounds per 1,000 cubic feet.
Okay.
So you start with 70 pounds. You're going to lose some getting to the compressor inlet. Ducting, air filtration, all that jive. The whole idea is, in a racer, and I told a lot of guys at the Diesel Power Challenge up in Denver,
Right.
you want a bell mouth where the headlight is.
Right.
So you're sucking air that's outside of it. No engine bay. A lot of guys had air filters under the hood.
Yes.
One guy had a bell mouth. The guy who won had a bell mouth on the compressor under the hood, and he had his headlight removed, and he thought the air was getting to there. But there's air coming through the radiator that's being heated, and we instrumented it for him, and lo and behold, he was getting hot air, even
Right.
though he thought. So we talked about it, and he decided he's going to run a duct, like a 6-inch duct, up to a bell mouth.
Right.
Like a big velocity stack where the headlight is. That will find him some power, because his density loss from Mother Nature to the compressor will be about 0.
Right. And I think a lot of guys forget that that's a very important area as well, because they'll say, well, the intercooling, it'll take care of all
No,
of that.
nothing-
But there's every aspect is off.
Nothing takes care of anything else. That's like, well, I
Exactly.
screwed up over here, but I can sweep that up later.
Exactly. It's a
The hell with
horsepower
that.
rob. It robs horsepower
Well,
at the end of the day.
it's rationalizing the fact that you didn't do it right.
Exactly.
You didn't do it right.
Yep.
That's the
Exactly.
bottom line. You don't preheat the air and not worry about it.
Right.
But most guys don't know they did it, because they haven't been developing ram air systems for 55, 60
Exactly.
years. We started talking about the density path through the engine. We talked about the cylinder actuation and what's going on there. Let's go out where we've got something to look at
I like it.
and talk through the whole damn thing.
Yeah, let's look at it.
Yeah. 86.
Oh!
Whoa!
Oh!
663,
Oh!
664. Oh my God!
What?
You don't want to miss it. It's getting good. All you have to do is subscribe.